Rhythm Section is a movie that stars Blake Lively as the character Stephanie Patrick. It is based on the novel by Mark Burnell of the same name. The screenplay for this movie is also written by the same author, Mark Burnell, and the Rhythm Section focuses on the character Stephanie Patrick, who I've said is played by Blake Lively, whose family was killed aboard a plane crash. But years later, the more she learns about this plane crash, the more she actually learns that maybe this wasn't just an ordinary plane crash. Maybe there was a conspiracy theory behind this plane crash, and maybe it was an actual terrorist attack. So she goes into training to take down the terrorist cell that orchestrated this terrorist attack. I was really looking forward to this movie. The trailers actually caught my attention. They made it look like it was going to be an investing and intriguing movie. I was wrong. This is more or less a dull movie. It's very bland. This movie feels like a watered-down version of Atomic Blonde or Red Sparrow. We seem to get one of these movies just about once a year. For a while at the beginning of this movie, it feels like nothing happens. It feels like it's just kind of going through the motions, just chugging along. It's trying to build your suspense and intrigue, but there's just not enough presented to you to make you actually care. And the character of Stephanie Patrick is a very complex character. At times, while you agree with her, you also disagree with her, and you sympathize with her, but then you don't sympathize with her. It's very strange, because you sympathize with her because you understand where she's coming from years after this horrific event happened. She's turned to prostitution, she's turned to drugs. You understand that, yeah, she's wrecked with all this guilt, with all this angst inside of her, that she wants to do something about what happened to her family. But then when she actually starts to do things, she starts to go on all these different missions, and it kind of plays out like a spy thriller. You have to question her actions at some times, and whether or not the decisions she's making actually make that much sense. There's so many times in this movie where she questions the confidence she has in herself. She just goes and does that mission anyway. It doesn't really mesh all that well together. Somebody filled with so much self-doubt and then able to throw themselves into danger. Not to mention, she seems really concerned with trying to save lives, yet she seems okay with taking lives as well. It's a very complex situation in terms of the character, and it doesn't always work. There's some confliction there within her, which if her character was fleshed out a little bit more, I think it would have been presented in a more detailed, sympathetic way if that was the route that this movie was going in. But in all honesty, there just wasn't enough there to balance out the two. So it really just makes you question whether or not she's really a good person inside, or whether or not she's actually a bad person inside. Reed Morano directed this movie. I haven't seen anything that Reed Morano has directed. I have no idea what she has directed. I don't really know what her directing style is like, but based on this movie, I didn't like her direction in this movie at all. She had a clear vision, I'll give her that, but some choices she makes in terms of directing. She'll insert some songs in a very somber, dreary type of scene, and these songs are more upbeat, trying to present a more positive attitude, and it didn't work. It just conflicted with the tone. She also sets the camera up for lots of still shots, the long, elongated still shots. And a lot of these shots involve watching Blake Lively walk for 45 seconds to a minute, or just a dead-on still shot of her staring at the camera, or just standing waiting for somebody to come, or standing behind cover for long periods of time. This does not build suspense at all. And that was honestly the turn-off point, and that happened throughout the first 5 minutes of this movie. I said to myself, this cannot happen throughout the whole movie, and it did. For most of the movie, those are the types of shots that we get. Just dead-on, still shots of Blake Lively walking, or just her staring at the camera, or standing still when the camera's focused on her. It wasn't a really good way to build suspense. It left me wanting more. It left me thinking that those sequences were too long, and it wanted me to want the movie to move on. And the way she handles the action scenes, there's a car chase in particular, which I'll say it's filmed in one take, which I have said is a gimmick in past reviews. It's starting to become a gimmick, at least. I'll give her credit where credit is due, that she did it in one take, and she filmed it from a unique perspective that we haven't really seen before, but it didn't work for me in that sequence, because the way the camera is set up in that sequence is that it's inside the car. We never get to see the depth of field outside of the car, except for when the camera pans around to the back of the car from the inside, and we see what happens to the cars and back of Blake Lively's car as this car chase is happening. But we never get to see a full rounded perspective of any of the surroundings in the area and what's going on. So with that, as the camera is set up in that way, it never feels like anybody is in danger except for Blake Lively. It never feels like anybody on the outside is even remotely in trouble. This had the potential to be a really compelling story, and at least an interesting story. And when you look at the breadcrumbs, when you look at the clues, when you look at the trail that Blake Lively goes on in this movie, it's really not that interesting. It's been done so many times before. I feel as if this was trying to be the next Red Sparrow or the next Atomic Blonde. I feel like that's what they were trying to emulate here. Didn't really work. Now, I'm not a fan of Red Sparrow, don't really like the movie, but I do like Atomic Blonde. But Atomic Blonde, despite being more of a thriller, is actually more well-paced. This has a lot of slow sequences, a lot of still shots that kind of make you question why they're in the movie, or why those scenes are elongated. And it's not as compelling or interesting or intriguing as Atomic Blonde. I think it's better than Red Sparrow. I'm only comparing it to those two movies because I think that those two movies are the easiest two to compare to this movie. This was just run-of-the-mill, just rinse, try, repeat, one watch. That was it. Really didn't like this movie all that much. I was kind of bored during it as well. It was dull. Nothing exciting really happened within this movie. The performances were great. I liked Blake Lively. There was some potential within the intrigue, and once it got going, I was into it a little bit more, but the directing here is horrible. The editing is horrible. Some music choices are horrible. The action scenes aren't that memorable, and they're few and far between. I'm going to say you will like the rhythm section if you like stale popcorn. Thank God January is over. Let's focus on February. Let's hope February is a lot better for movies. Guys, thank you for watching my review of the rhythm section. I will leave my link to my website in the description below. There you will find all my links to my social media accounts as well. You guys are the best. My name is Alex Madden, and I'll see you at the movies somewhere.